All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Word with Ty Brownlow. I am your host, Ty Brownlow. And remember, no one is worthless, no story is worthless. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest for you. All the way from the West Coast. Is it the Bay Area?
Yes.
All right, all the way from the Bay, y'all. Okay, y'all got to give it up. Thomishia Booker is in the house. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here tonight.
No problem at all. Now, I'm very excited for you to be here because, I came across something that you spoke on, and you were speaking about the George Floyd verdict.
Yes.
And, basically, in an article that I read, it was basically saying that in some senses, it wasn't seen as like the verdict wasn't one of justice. You know what I'm saying? Like there's still so much more to do. And today we're just really here to talk about more of that. So my first question to you would be, basically with all of the recent traumas, in the media, with all the killing of Black youth and, other youth of color like Adam Toledo here in Chicago, what kind of discussions in your mind can we have with our children about law enforcement, especially Black boys?
Yeah, definitely important discussions. I think first it's important to consider the age of the child that you're talking about, because you're going to be able to give more context and more information based on that. But regardless of the age of the child, it's super important that we're just honest with our kids. I encourage parents to really evaluate what their kids already know about our criminal justice system, about police officers, about engaging with them. And then from there, formulate how you're going to speak to them about them. For example, my son is 4.5, almost 5. So when we're entering into that conversation, we're giving him some foundational language around racism and around, safety, for example. And, kids, they're seeing us, they're seeing our reactions when we're watching the news and we have a reaction to what's going on. They see it. So it's not something that we can just hide. So I just encourage parents to bring the kids into the conversation, definitely speak from the truth, and use some discernment around how much language and context you want to give them. If it's the first time you're having a conversation with the child, you might want to prepare yourself for that in the ways that you need to. But as Black people, this is not something new for us. This is not something that's going to be the last of this. So we can't hide from these conversations.
And I feel that is very true. And, what's a little disheartening is, like how young sometimes we have to have these conversations, depending on the area that you live in,
Yes.
And it's very, unfortunate that you can't allow sometimes a child to grow up to like really be a child and develop the way that they, should develop, instead of like under like high stressful, situations or whatever. So
the protection of our children's innocence. One of the reasons that, the adultification of our Black children, because we have to have these conversations. And I know a lot of parents who, non-Black parents, they're saying, I'm worried, I'm scared, how should I have this conversation? Well, these are not conversations that we get to skip over. So I definitely encourage, parents of non-Black children to go ahead and have those conversations the same way we have to.
Mm-hmm. There you go. All right. Okay. There you go. All right. So now let me ask you, like, what signs can we look for if our child, is affected by all of the negative headlines and social media bias of society, because once again, for the George Floyd trial, every day, that's pretty much what it was on TV, CNN, here, this, that, and the other. It was the topic of basically every platform. And as you said, children pick up on everything. So even if they're not interested in the platform, they can, they're very much interested in the actions that you're taking, listening to these things and watching these things.
Yeah.
So what are some of the signs?
Again, it does vary on the age of the child, but, really what you're looking for is trauma responses. Trauma lives in our body. And when we have taken a certain situation and seen it as unsafe, we begin to respond in a way that's going to protect ourselves. That's that flight, fright, or freeze. And so with our children, you might be looking at anxiety. Some of the things that you may see in children is just when their lack of safety is not there and that base is taken away, they're worried about, okay, if I go outside, I interact with police, what's going to happen to me? How is my safety going to be protected? So it's going to vary how that shows up, especially depending on how much a child has been previously exposed to these situations and the conversations that may have been previously had in our homes. But really, I encourage parents we're constantly in a state of assessing our children. And this is no different. When you see that your child is responding differently, when they're acting out of character that is unusual to you, that's your opportunity to open up and get that conversation started and ask how they're feeling about it. Based on what you've seen, how are you feeling? Based on what you've heard, what does that make you feel like? What are you thinking about that? And really trying to find ways to reel it in. And the most difficult part about it is really we're not safe. We're not safe. And, we don't want to set up a false reality for our kids. And so really it's about parents establishing what safety looks like in their home and what are their own expectations of their child and what do they expect for the child to interact with law enforcement. I know that varies from home to home. So I try to stay away from giving advice to parents on how they want their kids to interact with law enforcement, but definitely having a conversation about what those rules are and how they should engage when they're outside of the home.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, that's fair because, seriously, and let's just really put the scope on our community. Mm-hmm. There are conversations that we're not having because of I'm not going to say the mindset sometimes, but sometimes it is the mindset, and sometimes the mindset could just be so lax that, hey, that happens to everybody all the time. You just may have to get over it. But you get over that because, as you said, man, that's like it's a cycle of PTSD that continues on and on and on, even into your adult years. And if it's never dealt with, you can have many different types of interactions with authority. It just doesn't necessarily have to be the police. It could just be any authority. That's right. It could be your boss. Right. It could be a school teacher. It can be anyone. But if you never address and deal with those issues, then it will, manifest itself forward. So I agree.
And we know that regardless of our behavior, because I know a lot of parents, sometimes they're saying, behave this way or do this differently. We know that no matter how we behave, the responses and the consequences are the same. So I really encourage parents to allow their children to be unapologetically who they are and Black and show up in those spaces because the outcome looks the same for us. It's not really fair to put the onus on children or on us to do things differently, because whether we resist or comply, we have seen that the outcome remains the same.
So in your opinion, let me ask, why is it more important? Like, I know we just finished talking about it, but we're going to hit on it a little bit more. But why is it more important than ever that we cast Black men in a positive light?
Mm-hmm. When it comes to, a lot of people talk about now, like what's happening now, the pandemic and, lots of murders by the hands of police. And it's not anything new. And so I say now more than ever, just because if not now, then when? And we can't afford to continue to wait to have these conversations. And really, it's about combating negative stereotypes that are just false and just elevating that Black joy for us. And we know that our young boys, they grow up to be feared as men. And it's just so important that we elevate our joy. We know joy is a revolutionary act. And throughout history, we have really seen our full range of emotions be suppressed and not allowed, and, silenced in a lot of ways. And it's just so important that we continue to really show exactly who we are and we stand firm in that. And that we just really have protection, not just for boys, but just for all Black children. I can't emphasize enough how important it is.
True, true. So now I want to talk about the same perspective, but for like single moms who are at home, raising, black boys, black girls, or what have you. Like, how can they instill in their children? And I'm just taking it from a standpoint where you have single moms out here who have raised strong black great men.
Mhm.
So what is it from those perspectives that you think other, single moms in the black community can take from or run?
Yeah, I think for parents in general raising Black children, the first priority for us is to ensure that our children know their history. They know who they are, they
Mm-hmm.
know where they come from, and they have a strong foundation to be prepared to step into the world. Because when we send our children into education systems and into the world in general that's not designed for us, it's unsafe and it's scary for them. So we need them firmly rooted in who they are. So when they're faced with oppression, when they're faced with racism, when they're faced with people telling them that they're not valued, they can stand up against that and they know who they are. And that self-confidence and building that self-confidence is important among all things. So really just preparing children to go out into that world and what that means, and making sure that the lessons that they need to learn about safety, the lessons that they need to learn about who they are, come from the home. We have too many parents who are, rely on education systems or say, oh, they'll learn that in school, or, oh, their teacher will teach them. We cannot depend on our teachers. We cannot depend on our education systems to educate us. They're not meant for us. So it starts at home, and we must arm our children to be prepared to go into society as Black people.
Okay. And okay, I find that last comment very interesting. I'm just going to sidebar here for a quick
Okay.
note. I don't know if you heard what happened down, I believe it's the state of Texas, where they're trying to pass a bill on like race and, race, white nationalism and things of that nature. Like, they don't want those things being taught in school.
Yes, it was. I cannot remember the terms they were using, but giving an optional, I think it was like an optional, it was something ridiculous. I want to say white history, but I know that's not the word.
Right.
But
I mean, they were trying to phase it in a sense where, okay, you can talk about this, but you can't talk about systemic racism and all of these other things and people having to do with this, that, and the other, which goes along with everything that we're talking about.
Mhm.
But, it's funny that you say that, because like, I just see like slowly but surely, people want to for the lack of a better term, whitewash or cover over certain things about Black history.
Yes.
And pretty much like you said, it is very imperative that, we as like parents, Black parents, period, instill a sense of culture and history in our children, because a lot of times as well, they're not going to learn that history in school as well.
No, they're not. And what they're actually learning in school, especially when it comes to the history of enslavement, that is American history. They can cover all of that in American history. But when it comes to our joy and Black excellence, that should be taught in ethnic studies. And so it's in schools, what you see a lot of is they start our history with enslavement, and then they go to Rosa Parks, and then they go to Martin Luther King, and then Malcolm X, and they close the book and it's done. But there's so much about our history, and so much about our history that is beautiful and excellent. And as I said, cover the trauma, cover that in American history, and let's elevate the joy in ethnic studies, because there's so much to be celebrated there.
Okay. Hey, look here. She's a therapist, okay? Man, don't listen to me. Listen to the therapist. All right. She's telling you what it is, okay? All right. So now, what advice do you have for parents? And I work with youth, especially for a non-public school. I was working with one out in California, in LA. So this question sort of goes hand in hand with that. But what advice do you have for parents whose children, man, basically they have taken autonomy into their own hands and they choose to run the street? Like, what advice can you give them, like, as far as like, hey, you know what? there is a lot of stuff going on out here in the world. I know you're probably not going to listen to me the way you should listen, or, like heed some of the lessons I'm giving you, because I know you're going to go out here and run the street. But if you're out here running the street, these are some things I really want you to take, heed to. So what advice could you give to some of those parents?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, as a mom and as a therapist, it's easy to say that the kids they're running the streets, they're out there, but it doesn't start that way. You have to back it up and learn the story of what's behind that and how they decided to get, to turn to the streets. There's a reason for that, especially, you have some homes, children, if they're not finding what they need in the places that are supposed to be meant for them and are supposed to create a sense of safety for them, they will go and find that in other places. So for me, it's really about getting to know these youth, getting to know their story and meeting them where they're at and finding out what they need. Most of the time it's about wanting to be heard, wanting to be listened to, wanting to be valued, and be treated and met with a lot of respect. I know a lot of parents might not want to hear this, but sometimes we parent our children like the police. Sometimes we parent our children like the education systems are doing, with a lack of respect. And so we have to challenge the ways that maybe we were parented, especially those of us who were parented in spaces that are, we're supposed to be seen and not heard. You can't expect children to just listen to what you say when you operate from a "I told you so" perspective, right? So, we only got so much time today, but, I think it's really about unpacking a lot of that and kind of getting to where this all started with those children and really getting to parenting from a place of love and really addressing and unpacking our own traumas that lead us to parent our children from a place of fear-based. Our history, we a lot of the things that our ancestors had to do was because of the spaces that they were in, because the times that we're in. They had to parent out of fear because of the conditions at the time. We don't have to do that now. We have other options that we can choose. And yeah, I mean, I can go on and on about this topic.
Hey.
I was getting on my soapbox a little bit.
Right. Well, no. But for those watching, they saw the smile, because I talk about this all the time. I talked about the generational gap, or this mysterious generational gap that really doesn't have to be if people, really take time to take off the ego hat.
Yes.
Please take that off. Throw it away, as a matter of fact, and put on your vision glasses and really look at what's going on. Yeah. See where you are. Mm-hmm. And I say this all the time. There's so much that, Generation X can learn from a millennial. There's so much that a millennial can learn from a Gen Xer,
Absolutely.
If we work together, to preserve those, thoughts and feelings or whatever. Mm-hmm. That is what keeps things going.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of us, I grew up in a household where, spankings and whoopings was the way. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us will say, well, I turned out okay, but okay is a really low bar. And we have to really look at what okay means. And at the end of the day, if our, emotional capacity to show up in spaces and to be able to be, emotionally stable, if we're not able to do that, if we're able to express the full range of emotions, if we're not able to demonstrate empathy and understanding and love and caring, you're not really okay. That's not okay. Sometimes we equate okay to, were you, on drugs, or maybe you were a teenage parent. That's what we say, like, oh, we were okay. Our parents whooped us and we were okay. But there's so much more to what okay means, and so much more that we grow up that we have to heal from. And I think the biggest sign is that if we continue to perpetuate, that trauma against our children.
The therapist. Okay. The therapist. All right. I'm just the host, but she's the therapist. Okay, so she's actually licensed and she knows what she's speaking of. All right, but no, hey, you hit the nail right on the head. There's only so much we can continue to do in these homes and not pay attention to like these like issues that are really in front of us. Yes. And as you said, hey, I turned out okay. You didn't turn out okay.
Right.
Any person who tells me that they turned out okay, then you're hiding something. That's just a cop out.
Yeah.
Because there's something that you're not able to do. It's in some matter of your life that you should be able to do, full strength.
Right. Can you imagine? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you? Sometimes I'm getting back on my soapbox again, but for our young kids, it's a lot of parents they will spank and hit and kind of go that route because they don't have a lot of tools. But can you imagine if somebody was as an adult, hitting you multiple times throughout the week to get their point across how you feel? I mean, we can't continue to say that is working. And I know a lot of parents out there are probably looking at, I know it's hard. But it does leave everlasting marks, not just physically, but emotionally on children when we parent that way.
Well, I'm going to put it in the term that, look here, I'm not going to be so nice about it. Look here. Some of the people on the plantation didn't want to get away because they wanted to be the person holding the whip.
That's right.
And that's just real. Okay. All right. There are lots of people who wanted to leave, but there were lots of people who wanted to stay because they wanted to hold the whip.
That's right. Yeah. And we can't take on the roles of the oppressor. So
you take on those roles, man. You can't keep your fellow man down because it makes you feel good. Like that, no, that's bad psychology. Stop. Yeah. Get rid of that. All right. But now we're going to move on to something nice. Okay?
Yes.
That transition. Nice. Okay. So we're going to talk about that lovely book you have behind you there that says Brown Boy Joy. All right. As I said before, ladies and gentlemen, CEO and owner of Hey Carter Incorporated. Okay. Basically, Brown Boy Joy. This is your book series. Okay. My Brown Skin. That's a book series you created as well. Now, you know what? I want you to talk about My Brown Skin and all the things that have come along with it as well.
Absolutely. So I started Hey Carter Books in 2016 after I had my son. When I found out I was pregnant, it was just a difficult time for me personally, just entering into that, what it meant to be a mom at that time. And then just also the heaviness of bringing a Black child into the world. And I wanted to do something about that. I didn't really imagine myself being a children's book author, but I really have planted the seeds for this, throughout my career and, going to college and things of that nature. I began to sort of lay the groundwork for that. In my earlier part of my career, I was a 0 to 5 therapist, so specializing in working with earlyhood, childhood mental health, and then also writing my dissertation on colorism with African-American women, and then also just my own personal experiences. So all of that sort of culminated into writing this book series. And my son, Carter, is the main character in the books. And so it is a 3-book series all about just raising self-confidence and pride in our young boys and Black children. Lots of success with the book. Brown Boy Joy is probably the most popular book right now. It was featured in the Netflix original series Bookmark, Celebrating Black Voices, where my book is read by Jill Scott. And if you haven't checked that out, definitely do so. She does such a wonderful job, to the point where now when I do, school readings, I play the episode because she does such a great job, and just her voice is just so angelic. And in fact, they paired the celebrities with the authors, that they felt that the celebrity could carry out the book, how it's written. And, my book is written in rhyme. And so with Jill Scott's sort of melodic tone and just her voice, they felt like it was a good match, and it definitely was. So yeah, it also recently it was on the Late Show, and they actually wrote a little poem about the book and myself, and that was just amazing to see that as well. So it's doing its thing, and I'm just so happy to see Black boys front and center. And one of the other reasons why I really wanted to have a book dedicated for Black boys is, as I was looking for books, there were very limited books with Black boys on the front cover, and I wanted to make sure that they were front and center.
I like that. Look, culture, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I probably didn't say that word in the beginning or anything like that, but I'm going to drop it in there now, culture, because if you have been listening, that's pretty much high at the list, basically you are presenting your child. Hey, look, this is who you are, okay? Yeah. Society may tell you that you're this. No, this is who you are, okay?
That's right.
All the things I'm instilling in you, to take with you, you pack them up and you take it with you throughout life. And when you grow your family, you're going to instill this into your children as well.
That's right. And really, I'm showing them a reflection of themselves. And when the one thing I love about what parents say to me about the books is that they say that their children point to a character on the book and they say, Mom, Dad, that's me. And there was so much intentionality behind the illustrations and the design of the characters in the books. And that just is the best compliment for me, is just when children are able to see themselves, because really what I'm doing is just showing a mirror to them. I am showing them what I see, and which is so much joy, so much talent, so much brilliance. I mean, there's so much to love about us and our culture. And I want Black children to know that they are loved and they are amazing and they are cherished. And no matter what the world shows you or tells you, you are everything, and there are no limits to what you can do.
Okay. Hey, y'all. Nas has a song. I know I can. Be anything I want to be. Man, yes, you can. All right. Don't let nobody tell you anything different. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So now, if people want to get, access to these books, how can they get access to these books?
Absolutely. So definitely, if you're not following me on social media platforms, you can check us out at Hey Carter Books on all social media platforms. And if you're looking to buy the book series, you can visit www.heycarterbooks.com. Aside from the books, we also have coloring books, we have sunglasses, we have t-shirts, we have backpacks. So it's a whole movement. I really want Black children, especially Black boys, to feel pride in who they are. And really, when they show up with their Brown Boy Joy shirt, their sunglasses, their backpack, they're wearing that with a lot of pride. And I really want that to permeate into the spaces that they enter.
Okay. All right. So look, no. Now, let me just say this. If you are not following her on social media, you're about to start following her on social media. Okay. All right. So now if people want to get in contact with you via social media, that's how they get in contact with you. Hey Carter Books.
Yes, at Hey Carter Books. You can also follow my personal page, which is at Melanin Mommy. I talk a lot about just inspiring yourself, encouragement, especially changing limited beliefs, changing your thought process, especially when you want to show up into spaces yourself as an adult. So if that's something that people are interested in, definitely follow me on my personal page, which is at Melanin Mommy.
All right.
MOMMY.
All right. There you go. Okay. Now, look, I will be the first to say that I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and it's been one of the books. Okay. But I've come to my last question, the question that my show is known for, so I have to ask, Miss Thomishia Booker, what is the one word that best describes you and why?
I would say passionate. I thought a lot about that one word, and of course, there's not just one word to describe me.
I know.
But I think passionate is really the word, because whatever I do, I put my all into it. And those people who know me personally will say, oh, she's so involved in so many things. And that's just because I'm passionate about so much. And I'm passionate about making sure that when I'm creating things, that I put my all into it. And I try to spread myself is in wide, broad strokes, so I can. It's like my passion and creativity can show up in those places. So passion is definitely the word that I think describes me the most.
Well, I used it earlier, so I'm gonna use it again. Culture, okay? So passionate culture, because at the end of the day, man, it's about teaching, it's about learning, it's about, cultivating, basically. Like you're pretty much bringing up a young Black child, a young Black boy at that, here in this country. So you're building him up to be the strongest, person he can possibly be, to get out here and make change and make a positive change and make a positive effect here in the United States and the world, period. So there you go. All right. Well, man, look here. Once again, I have enjoyed this thoroughly. Man, I thank you for coming on my platform, blessing us, with your transparency. Man, that's what's up. That is what's up. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, this has been Word with Ty Brownlow. I am your host, Ty Brownlow. Remember, no one is worthless. No story is worthless. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Word with Ty Brownlow, or go to my website, tybrownlow.com. You can get this interview along with other great interviews. It's Thomishia Booker. I thank you for being my guest. We out, people. Thanks.